a developer relations engineer on the Android team. I'm joined by Halil, a software engineer on the Compose team, and I'm also joined by Bubba, a golden doodle. Today, we're going to talk about how you can use Compose text APIs to create functional, exceptional, and delightful user input experiences. We'll be using a pet social media app to showcase these APIs and to give Bubba a place for his barks to be heard. We'll be starting with an app that looks great but isn't properly using the robust Compose text APIs to make it feel as great as it looks. Before we get to the app, I want to introduce the new state-based text field. This is our new best practice for text field usage, and you'll see it used in so many ways throughout this talk. Here are some of the features of the new text fields. We've switched to a different state hoisting paradigm. By replacing value and callback hoisting, the text field state provides a more complete and reliable approach to managing the state of a text field. We've replaced the onValueChange callback with the new input transformation mechanism for handling input modifications. We've updated the visual transformation to output transformation for managing how text is presented. And we've tidied up single and multi-line configuration parameters. Okay, back to the dogs. We'll start with the registration screen. Right now, the registration screen takes in a username and a password. It works and allows a pup to register, but everyone around him can see his password when he's typing it in. And after registering, he may be thinking about squirrels and forget about the credentials he just chose. In this section, we'll update the password field to hide text as our puppy is typing it in for security, add a password requirement for extra security, and we'll save our pup's super secure credentials to their password manager. Here's our username field that utilizes the new state-based text field. We can see the standard state defined in line, the line limit to a single line, and the placeholder text of username. For the password field, we'll be using the brand new secure text field. Key features are hiding password text by default and disabling cut and copy actions. The implementation is similar to that of the text field. We'll set the state. In this case, you can see it's been hoisted and then passed in. And the placeholder will be set as password. Unlike in text field, we don't have to specify the line limit. Secure text fields are always single line. Just by switching to secure text field, we gave our puppies a safer user experience. Another important safety aspect is to add password requirements to make sure our pup chooses a secure password. We'll disable the sign up button unless the password input is at least 8 characters. We'll use our hoisted state to enable the sign up button based on the password length. It works, and the button's only enabled when the requirement is met. However, the puppy doesn't know what the requirements are and may be confused. We can add 2 things to make the requirements clearer to the pup. The supporting text parameter allows us to add text defining what the requirement is. And the isError parameter will put the text field in an error state when the length of the password is between 1 and 7 characters. This allows us to enforce our password requirements while also communicating them clearly to our puppies. Let's add code to save their credentials so they don't forget their new super secure password. We'll be saving credentials using the new Compose Autofill APIs. While testing this feature, you'll need to opt into Autofill and enable a password manager in the Settings app of your device. In order to make your text field autofill enabled, add a semantics modifier to your text fields modifier, and inside add a content type parameter. Content type is the way that we specify to the system what kind of content to save or fill. There are many autofill content types for many different use cases. For example, if you were using a phone number text field, the phone number content type would be useful to add and would indicate to the system that you want to fill a phone number if there is one saved. For the registration page, we'll be using new username and new password, which allows a pup to save their username and password credentials to their password manager when they register. We will set the content type of the username text field to be new username, and then set the secure text field's type to new password. We have the information, but need to commit the information to the password manager. To do this, add a value to hold a reference to an autofill manager. Then we can call autofillmanager.commit when the button is clicked. When you press sign up, you'll see a bottom sheet with a prompt to save credentials to the password manager. Now that our pup has registered for an account, let's use it to log in. Currently, this screen has text fields for the doggy to input their username and password. The problem is our puppy did chase a squirrel right after going through registration and doesn't remember his credentials at all. And while he appreciates the password field being more secure, he wants to be able to toggle the password's visibility. In this section, we will update the functionality by filling in the pup's credentials for them, and we'll update the button in the password text field to toggle the password visibility. Let's take these text fields in the login screen and make them autofill enabled. This time, we will use username and password for the content types. Using these content types tells the system to see if there are any username-password combos in the password manager that can be filled. When the username field is clicked into, the system will suggest relevant credentials that are saved by the password manager and give the user an option to autofill them. Our doggy also wants to toggle the visibility of their autofilled password. Let's add that in. We'll update the functionality of the icon in the trailing section of the password text field to not only change icon while clicked, but also toggle the password's visibility. To do this, we'll use text obfuscation mode. Text obfuscation mode is a new feature which allows you to define the visibility of the text in a secure text field. There are 3 options: visible, which shows anything typed; hidden, which hides all character input; and reveal last typed, which is a new API that shows the last character typed for a set amount of time before hiding it. Our code has a variable called password visible that is updated when the icon is clicked. If password visible is true, we will set text obfuscation mode to visible, and if not, we'll set it as reveal last typed. Voila! We can now toggle our password's visibility. After logging in, we will want to add an extra protection to make sure no one steals our darling doggo's personal information. I'll pass it off to Halil to explain two-factor authentication.
Thank you, Meghan. Let's talk about how we can make this two-factor authentication experience both exceptional and delightful. First, we want to have a more customized look and feel. Just the regular text field is kind of boring. And second, we want to use Autofill system to quickly fill this field from the received message. We start with our first goal, the design. Right now, our app shows a regular text field like on the left. Instead, we would like this bespoke look and feel on the right, a field that is specifically designed to accept an OTP code. So, how do we do it? Intuitively, we may think that we can achieve this look with 6 separate text fields placed in a row. But then, we will need to guarantee that each text field only accepts a single digit. Also, after a digit is typed, the focus should switch to the next field and also back to the previous field when erased. And eventually, when submit is clicked, we will have to concatenate the contents of all 6 text field states to have the full OTP code. This is already so much work and there is more to address. But there's a way we can keep using a single text field and achieve the desired design. Here we have the current code with this text field setup. It limits the length to 6 characters, configures the keyboard to show numbers, and also disables multi-line entries. So it is set up correctly and works fine. It just lacks that custom look that can make it special. Let's start with simply switching our text field to basic text field. Basic text field is the underlying composable from foundation module that all text fields depend on. It can be used to build more stylistic text fields appropriate for any design system. After switching to basic text field, our OTP field looks like this, because basic text field does not offer any styling or decorations whatsoever. But this is okay, because we want an entirely different layout anyway. The difference we just saw mainly comes from how material text field uses the decorator parameter of basic text field. Material text fields use it to add labels, icons, paddings, background color, and any other visual decoration around inner text field. Here, the red bordered regions show where inner text field is exactly located. The rest is the decorator. We are also going to use the decorator parameter to implement our unique design. However, we will skip calling this inner text field parameter, since we want to replace the inner text rendering with 6-digit boxes. But be careful, this may not always be the best option for you. Inner text field is responsible for a lot of things, like rendering the text itself, enabling gestures like tap or long click, showing selection, and cursor handles. Luckily, we don't need most of those for our OTP field. Maybe except for showing the text toolbar to paste text from the clipboard. Here, we recommend letting the keyboard handle this problem. You can see here that Gboard suggests pasting the copied text. Users can paste through the keyboard without needing the toolbar. Or shortly we will talk about autofill, which makes even copy-pasting look like so much work. Let's continue from where we left off. We are skipping inner text field and writing our own decoration with a unique layout. We know that we are going to have a row of 6-digit composables as decoration for our text field. Here's a reference implementation for the digit composable. There's nothing much interesting about it. It just shows the number in a nice looking box. Each digit composable is going to get its corresponding character from the text field state according to its index. For missing characters, we just pass an empty space to the digit composable. Well, that's just really it. No need to manage multiple text fields. A single basic text field with a custom decorator achieves our design goals. Basic text field still has its core functionality. We only replace the part that shows the text field state's content with our own layout. We have completed our unique layout. Now, let's add a way to automatically fill in the 2FA code. We can do this through autofill integration. In the login screen, autofill was used to fill information that the user had already saved into their password manager. For two-factor authentication, we can use autofill to fill the OTP code from a text message. Not surprisingly, we are again going to use the semantics modifier and content type parameter. This time, the content type needs to be SMS OTP code. The OTP code message arrives after the user successfully logs in. The system asks whether we want to use the autofill service. After we say yes, the code is entered automatically from the new message. And that's it. We completed the planned improvements for our two-factor authentication screen. Now that the pub can get into the app, let's talk about one of the most important parts of a social media app, chat. Currently, on this screen, our pub can text with his pack. But sometimes woofs and barks are not enough to express his many emotions. So we will give him a way to use GIFs or stickers to be more expressive. But he is also an Android user with a foldable. He likes to multitask, so he wants to share his favorite photos via drag and drop. We asked our pup what ways he likes to send his adorable GIFs. He says that he usually uses GIFs from the keyboard. Or sometimes he copies and pastes cute images from his favorite website. And of course, the one he likes the most, drag and drop from other apps with his paws. Unfortunately, TextField composables are not implicitly configured to handle this type of content coming from any of these sources. This is because TextField is just a text component. Receiving rich content requires extra logic and care. Therefore, we introduced the content receiver modifier to unify all these different methods into a single API, so that you can do less but gain more on user experience. This API is currently marked as experimental, so it is subject to possible API changes in the future, but its implementation is considered stable and ready for use. You can start by simply adding content receiver to your modifier chain. Having this modifier is enough to let the keyboard know that this text field now supports GIFs, stickers, and any other rich content. But we have more to do. The content receiver modifier takes a lambda that receives a transferable content object. Transferable content is mainly a wrapper around clip data and clip description APIs. You can learn more about how to handle this type of data in the linked documentation. We will process this transferable content in our vModel. Here, inside our vModel, we keep track of two states. One is a regular text field state for our message field. The other one is a list of images to be sent with the next message. Then, inside our handle content function, we iterate the received items inside transferable content and extract URI addresses using the provided consume function. We are going to assume each URI points to an image file. We update our selected images list with these new URIs. These files may require further analysis to check whether they actually contain image content. We leave this out as a further exercise. There we have it. Our pup can use his favorite GIFs to tell others what a good boy he is. But content receiver has one more trick up its sleeve. And you can tell that there might be more to this modifier by realizing that content receiver is not tied to text field at all. It is just a modifier. We can apply it anywhere. We can put it on a parent composable of our text field and it would still work. This is because TextField looks for this modifier on its parent chain, not just in its own modifier. But then, what would be the use of placing this modifier anywhere else than our text field? The answer is drag and drop. The composable that has content receiver attached to it becomes the actual drop zone. When we directly apply the modifier on text field, this would be the only place where we can drop the dragging items. However, when content receiver is applied on the entire screen, everywhere becomes a drop zone, makes it easier to target. How about that? We added drag and drop integration without doing anything additional. We only moved the content receiver modifier to the screen level. And with that, our chat experience is perfect. Also, I hear that Meghan is working on something special for our pup.
Thank you, Halil. This social media app also provides the option to buy a customized collar for our fluffy bestie. However, the text sizing looks off on the front of the collar and the phone number does not format properly. In this section, we will size the name on the collar based on length and format the phone number in the American format. To fix the name sizing issue, we can use the AutoSize API, which allows the text to take up as much space as possible given the parent size constraints. To the composable that displays the text, we will add the AutoSize parameter and set it to textAutoSize.stepBased. This allows us to take up as much space as makes sense based on how much text there is and how much space there is. The best part is that it just works out of the box. The next most important part of a collar is to have a phone number in case our fluffy friend goes missing. Currently, the number isn't formatted at all and just looks like a jumble of digits. We can use TextField's new input and output transformations to properly format this number. In this example, we will be formatting this number like an American phone number. We want to add the parentheses and the dash through formatting and not have our puppy type them in. Here's the flow of how input and output transformations happen. Currently, we're receiving input. Input can come from multiple places, including but not limited to keyboard, paste, and selection. Here are some examples of inputs that may come in. The input will go through an input transformation, which you can think of as a filter function. In our case, we want to limit the length to 10 characters, which is how long an American number is. And we only want digits to be passed in. Let's start by limiting the length of what can be input to 10 characters. Then, we can chain input transformations and add a restriction for the input to only be digits. Now the text is limited to 10 digits and the text with the input transformation is saved in the text field state. The number still needs to be formatted, so we'll add an output transformation. In order to format an American phone number properly, the opening parentheses is at index 0, the closing parentheses is at index 4, and the dash is at index 8. For this output transformation, we will be using a text field buffer, which is similar to a string builder. This will allow you to change text through methods like insert, replace, delete, and append. We'll call transform output on a text field buffer and apply the formatting rules we defined for American phone numbers. We can add that output transformation to the text field's output transformation parameter. Now the text is outputting a properly formatted phone number. Here's a close-up of our full transformation, including both input and output transformations. And here it is in action on the collar screen. We can see that it's also taking advantage of AutoSize. This collar looks awesome. In this talk, we covered APIs like Autofill, state-based text field, AutoSize, and content receiver that can make your app more functional, exceptional, and delightful. We hope you've learned something new and had some fun along the way. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Meghan, and I was joined by Halil. Happy coding!